It was a Friday night, the kind that drags its feet into the early hours of Saturday, leaving behind a haze of laughter and the faint scent of spilled beer. I had just left a friend's house party, a raucous affair filled with the kind of camaraderie that only comes from too much alcohol and too little sleep. The clock on my dashboard read 2 a.m., and the road stretched out before me like a dark, yawning mouth, ready to swallow me whole. The country road was long and winding, flanked by trees that loomed like silent sentinels. I felt a familiar thrill of speed as I pressed down on the accelerator, the engine purring beneath me. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the asphalt ahead, but the shadows seemed to creep closer, as if they were alive, hungry for the warmth of my passing. As I drove, I noticed a pair of headlights in the distance, growing larger and brighter. At first, I thought nothing of it. Just another late-night traveler, perhaps heading home from a long shift or a night out. But as I glanced in my rearview mirror, my heart sank. The car was gaining on me faster than I had anticipated. I pressed down harder on the gas, feeling the thrill of the chase, but the car behind me was relentless. The speedometer climbed, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I glanced back again, and the car was right on my tail, its headlights blinding me. Panic began to bubble up in my chest. I'd always been a confident driver, but this felt different. There was an urgency in the way the car followed me, a predatory instinct that actually sent shivers down my spine. I finally decided to let it pass. I slowed down, hoping to create some distance, but the car mirrored my movements, sticking to me like a shadow. I could feel my heart racing, a drumbeat of fear that drowned out the sound of the engine. I glanced to my right, and then there it was, a narrow road leading off into the darkness. Against my better judgment, I took the road, desperate to escape this unseen pursuer. But the car followed, its headlights cutting through the night like a knife. I pulled off the road, my tires crunching on gravel, and came to a stop. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I stared at the car, now parked a few feet away. The engine was still running, the headlights illuminating the area around me, but the driver remained hidden behind the glare. The silence was deafening, broken only by the low hum of the engine and the distant rustle of leaves in the night breeze. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the fear that gripped me. I sat frozen, my mind racing with possibilities. Who was this driver? What did they want? After what felt like an eternity, I summoned the courage to reach for my phone, my fingers trembling as I fumbled with the screen. I needed to call for help, to alert someone to my predicament. But just then, as I glanced up, my breath caught in my throat. The driver had stepped out of their car. A figure cloaked in shadows, the headlights casting an eerie glow around him. I could barely make out the features, but the outline was unmistakable. A tall figure, broad-shouldered, with an air of menace that sent chills down my spine. I felt a primal urge to flee, but my body was paralyzed with fear. I had to know what they wanted. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice shaky but loud enough to break the stillness. "What do you want?" The figure paused, tilting his head slightly as if considering my words. Then, without a word, began to walk toward me, the footsteps crumbling on the gravel. I instinctively locked my door with the sound of the click echoing in the confined space of my car. Please, just leave me alone," I pleaded, my voice rising in desperation. But the figure continued to advance, the pace steady and unhurried. I could see now he was wearing a dark hoodie, the fabric obscuring the face. My mind raced with thoughts of escape. I could drive away, but what if he was faster? What if he had a weapon? As he approached, I could finally see a glint of something metallic in his hand. My heart dropped. It was a knife reflecting the light from my headlights. The sight of the glinting blade sent a jolt of terror through my veins, electrifying my senses and igniting a primal instinct to survive. I pressed my back against the seat, my breath quickening as I weighed my options. The figure was now close enough that I could hear the soft rustle of clothing, the sound mingling with the pounding of my heart. "Why are you following me?" I shouted again, my voice trembling, a fragile thread of defiance woven into the fabric of my fear. The figure paused, the knife hanging limply at its side, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of hesitation in the stance. But then he raised his head slightly, and I was met with an abyss of darkness where the face should have been. It was as if the shadows themselves had come alive, consuming any trace of humanity. I felt a chill slowly creep up my spine, a whisper of dread that curled around my throat like a noose. "Why?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper now, the word hanging in the air like a fragile glass ornament ready to shatter at any moment. The figure took another step forward, and I could see the knife more clearly now, its blade gleaming ominously in the light. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, the voice low and gravelly like the sound of gravel crunching underfoot. "Where is here?" My mind racing. "What do you mean?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, took another step closer, and I felt the weight of the presence pressing down on me, suffocating and oppressive. I glanced around, searching for an escape route, but the darkness loomed like a wall, impenetrable and foreboding. In a moment of sheer desperation, I turned the ignition key, the engine roaring to life. A sound that felt like a lifeline thrown into the abyss. I slammed the gear into reverse, my tires spinning on the gravel as I prepared to flee. But before I could move, the figure lunged forward, the hand reaching out toward my window. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed into the night, and I slammed my foot down on the accelerator. The car lurched backward, the headlights illuminating the figure for a brief moment. I caught a glimpse of the face, a mask of rage and despair, and then I was free, tearing down the road, the gravel crunching beneath my tires as I fled into the night. I drove like a man possessed, my heart racing and adrenaline coursing through my veins. The world outside blurred into a streak of darkness and shadows, the trees lining the road becoming mere silhouettes against the night sky. I could still feel the weight of that figure's gaze on me, a phantom presence that lingered in the rearview mirror, haunting my every thought. As I sped down the winding road, my mind raced with questions. Who was it? What did he mean by "you shouldn't have come here"? The words echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder of the danger that I had narrowly escaped. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles white as I fought to regain my composure. But the further I drove, the more I felt the grip of panic tightening around me. The road seemed endless, stretching into an abyss that mirrored the darkness of my thoughts. I needed to find a place to regroup, to think. I glanced at the gas gauge, half full. I could make it to the next town, but would I be safe there? Suddenly the headlights caught something on the side of the road, a sign. I squinted to read it as I approached, the words flickering into view. "Welcome to Hollow Creek." Hollow Creek. I'd heard whispers about this place, tales of its eerie atmosphere and the strange occurrences that plagued its residents. It was said to be a town where shadows held secrets in the past was never truly buried. My gut twisted at the thought, but I had no choice. I needed to stop, to gather my thoughts and figure out my next move. As I entered the town, the streetlights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced along the pavement. The buildings loomed like sentinels, their windows dark and uninviting. I felt a chill in the air, a sense of foreboding that wrapped around me like a shroud. I spotted a small diner on the corner, its neon sign buzzing weakly. It was a beacon of light in the oppressive darkness, and I pulled into the parking lot, my tires crunching on the gravel. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead, and stepped out of the car. The bell above the door jingled as I entered the diner, and the warm glow of the interior enveloped me. There were a few patrons sat scattered at the counter, their faces obscured by shadows. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked up from her notepad and offered a weary smile. "Evening. What can I get you?" she asked, her voice a soothing balm against the tension that still gripped me. "I'll have a coffee, please," I replied, my voice slightly shaky, as I slid onto a stool at the counter, grateful for the momentary reprieve from the chaos outside. The waitress poured a steaming cup and set it in front of me, a rich aroma filling my senses. "Long night?" she asked, her gaze lingering on me, as if she could sense the turmoil beneath my calm facade. "You could say that," I said, forcing a smile. "Just passing through." She nodded knowingly, her expression shifting to one of concern. "Hollow Creek can be a strange place for newcomers. You might want to be careful out there, especially at night." I took a sip of the coffee, its warmth spreading through me, but the chill of her words settled in my stomach. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Just, things aren't always what they seem here. People have their secrets, and sometimes they don't take kindly to outsiders poking around." She glanced toward the window, her eyes narrowing, as if she were watching something or someone just beyond the glass. I followed her gaze, but all I saw was the darkened street, the shadows shifting in the flickering light. "I didn't mean to intrude," I said in my voice barely above a whisper. "I just needed a place to stop." "Everyone needs a place to stop at some point," she replied, her tone softening. Just remember, not all stops are safe. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I considered her words. The figure from the road, the warning I had received, it all felt like a tangled web closing in around me. I needed to know more about this town, about the dangers that lurked in its shadows. Is there anyone around here I can talk to? Someone who knows the history of Hollow Creek? I asked, hoping to glean some insight. The waitress hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting to the other patrons, before she leaned in close. You might want to speak to Old Man Jenkins. He's been around here forever and knows more about this town than anyone. But be careful how you approach him. He can be a bit eccentric. Where can I find him? I asked, my heart racing at the prospect of uncovering the secrets of Hollow Creek. Just head down Main Street until you reach the old library. He usually sits on the bench outside feeding the pigeons. But remember, don't mention the past too loudly. Some things are better left undisturbed. I nodded, feeling a mix of determination and dread. I finished my coffee and the warmth, fading as I prepared to step back into the chill of the night. The waitress watched me with a mixture of concern and curiosity, as if she could sense the weight of my decision. Thank you for the coffee, I said, forcing a smile as I slid off the stool. And for the advice. Just be careful, she replied, her voice low and earnest. Hollow Creek has a way of pulling you in, and once you're in, it can be hard to get out. With that, I stepped outside, the cold air hitting me like a slap. The street was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant rustle of leaves and the occasional creak of old wood. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead at the library. As I walked down Main Street, the dim glow of the streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement. The buildings loomed around me, their darkened windows felt like watchful eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being observed, that the town itself was alive and aware of my presence. After a few blocks, I spotted the old library, its facade crumbling, but still standing proud against the test of time. Just outside on a weathered bench sat an elderly man with a scruffy beard and a tattered coat. He was tossing crumbs to a flock of pigeons, his gaze distant and unfocused. Old Man Jenkins? I called out, my voice breaking the stillness of the night. He turned slowly, his eyes narrowing as he assessed me. What do you want, stranger? His voice was gravelly, like the crunch of gravel underfoot. I was told you might know about the history of Hollow Creek, I said, trying to keep my tone respectful. I'm just passing through, but I'd like to learn a little bit more about the town. He looked at me for a moment, then gestured for me to sit. You've got guts coming here at this hour. Most folks wouldn't dare. I took a seat on the bench, and the wood cold beneath me. I've heard some strange things about this place, and I just want to understand. Well, strange is an understatement, young man, he replied, his eyes flickering with a mix of amusement and caution. Hollow Creek has its share of ghosts, both the kind you see and the kind you don't. What is it you want to know? Well, anything you can tell me, I said, leaning in. I heard there are secrets here, things people don't talk about. He chuckled softly, a sound that held both wisdom and weariness. Secrets? Oh, there are plenty. But remember, some secrets are buried for a reason. You dig too deep, and you might unearth something that's better left alone. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling in my stomach like a stone. I understand. But I need to know. I can't just walk away without at least trying to understand what's going on here. He studied me again, his gaze piercing through the dim light. All right, then, but you should know that knowledge comes with a price. The past is a heavy burden, and it can change you in ways you might not expect. I'm willing to take that risk, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Nodding slowly, he said, Hollow Creek was once a thriving town, full of life and laughter, but something happened. A darkness seeped in, and it changed everything. People started disappearing, and those who remained grew wary of each other. Trust became a rare commodity. What kind of darkness? I asked, my curiosity piqued. Legends speak of a curse, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Some say it was brought on by the greed of the townsfolk. Others claim it was the land itself, angry at the way it was treated. Whatever the cause, it left its mark. The library you see behind us holds the town's history, but it also holds the stories of those who vanished. If you're brave enough, you might find the answers you're looking for in there. I glanced back at the library, its darkened windows seeming to beckon me closer. And what about you? Why are you out here feeding the pigeons? He chuckled again, a sound tinged with sadness. I'm just a remnant of what once was. I've seen way too much and lost too many. The pigeons are my only company now. They don't judge, and they don't ask questions. Do you know where I can find the records? I pressed, eager to delve deeper. Inside, but please be careful. The library has a way of revealing truths that some would rather keep hidden. You might find more than just dusty old books, he warned, his eyes glinting with a mix of caution and intrigue. I took a deep breath, feeling the chill of the night seep into my bones. Thank you, sir. I'll tread lightly. He nodded, a flicker of approval in his gaze. Good luck, stranger. Just remember, once you start digging, there's no telling what you might uncover. And not all knowledge is a blessing. With that, I stood up, my heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. I turned toward the library, its imposing structure looming ahead like a guardian of forgotten secrets. The air felt thick with anticipation, and each step I took echoed in the stillness of the night. The old wooden door creaked as I opened and pushed it, revealing a dimly lit interior filled with a musty scent of aged paper and dust. Inside, the library was a labyrinth of towering shelves, each one crammed with books that seemed to whisper stories of the past. The faint glow of a flickering lamp illuminated a small reading area, casting long shadows that danced across the floor. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of what the old man had told me heavy on my mind, but my curiosity propelled me forward. I wandered through the aisles, running my fingers along the spines of the books, feeling the texture of history beneath my fingertips. Titles like The Disappearance of Hollow Creek and Curses of the Forgotten caught my eye, but I knew I needed to find something more specific, records, perhaps, that could shed light on the town's dark past. As I turned the corner, I stumbled upon a section labeled Local History. My heart raced as I scanned the titles, searching for anything that might lead me to the truth. It was then I spotted a dusty, leather-bound tome that seemed out of place among the others. Its cover was cracked, and the title had faded. Something about it called to me. I pulled it from the shelf and opened it carefully. The pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with handwritten notes and newspaper clippings. As I flipped through, I found accounts of strange occurrences, people vanishing, without a trace, eerie lights in the woods, and whispers of a curse that had plagued the town for generations. One entry caught my eye, the night of the Great Disappearance. It detailed a festival that had once brought the townfolk together, only for it to end in chaos as several families vanished that very night. The last line sent chills down my spine. They say the woods claimed them, and the town was never the same again. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the library, a soft, rustling sound, like the sound of pages turning. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Was I alone? I glanced around, but the shadows seemed to deepen, swallowing the light. The air grew colder, and I felt an unsettling presence, as if the library itself was alive and watching me. Hello? I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No response came, just the eerie silence that enveloped me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Perhaps it was just my imagination, fueled by the stories I had read and the weight of what the old man had told me in his warning. I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping dread that settled into my stomach. I'd come here for answers, and I couldn't let fear drive me away. I returned my attention to the tome, flipping back to the entry about the Great Disappearance. The details were haunting, but they also felt like a thread I could pull to unravel the mystery. I knew I needed to know more about that night, about the festival and the families who had vanished. As I continued to read, I noticed a small folded piece of paper tucked between the pages. My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled it out, revealing a handwritten note that seemed to be a personal account. Handwriting was shaky as if the author had been overcome with emotion. We were warned not to go into the woods after dark. They said the spirits of those who vanished still linger, searching for their families, but we were young and foolish, drawn by the music and laughter of the festival. When the sun set, the lights in the woods began to flicker, and we felt an irresistible pull. I lost sight of my sister, and when I turned back, she was gone. I've never forgiven myself for not keeping her safe. If you find this, heed my warning. The woods are not what they seem. After reading the note, a chill ran down my spine as I read that last line. The woods had always been a place of mystery and fear in the town, but the note added a personal touch to the legend. I felt a mix of sympathy and dread for the author, who had clearly been haunted by that night for years. Suddenly the rustling noise returned. louder this time, accompanied by a faint sound of footsteps. My heart raced as I glanced around the library, the shadows now feeling more oppressive than before. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. Is anyone there? I called out again, my voice steadier this time, though I could hear the tremor beneath it. No answer came, but the footsteps continued, moving closer. I felt a surge of adrenaline, and without thinking, I tucked the note into my pocket and hurried toward the reading area, hoping to find a place to hide or at least get a better view of whatever was approaching. As I reached the small table, I crouched beneath it, peering around the edge. Flickering lamp cast eerie shadows, and I could see the outline of a figure moving between the shelves. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to see more clearly. The figure paused, and I could make out a silhouette, a tall, thin person dressed in dark clothing, their face obscured by the shadows. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in the silence of the library. I held my breath, trying to remain as still as possible, hoping that whoever or whatever was lurking wouldn't notice me. The figure shifted slightly, and I caught a glimpse of a pale hand reaching out to touch the spines of the books, as if searching for something. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Who was it, and what were they looking for? The note I had just read flashed through my mind, warning me about the woods and the spirits that lingered. Was this figure connected to that haunting tale? Suddenly, the figure turned, and I could see the glint of something metallic in their hand, a small lantern that flickered to life, casting a warm glow that illuminated the features. My breath hitched in my throat as I recognized the face. It was a woman, her expression one of deep sorrow and longing. "Please don't be afraid," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean you no harm." I hesitated, unsure whether to reveal myself or remain hidden. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling slightly. "I am the guardian of the story," she replied, her gaze drifting to the shelves around us. "I've been waiting for someone to listen, someone who can help." "Help with what?" I asked, curiosity overcoming my fear. "The festival, the disappearances. They are all connected to the woods," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "The spirits of those who vanished are trapped, unable to find peace. They need to be remembered, to have their stories told." I felt a chill run down my spine as I processed her words. "How can I help? I'm just a visitor." "You have already begun," she said, gesturing to the note I had found. "By seeking the truth, you are honoring their memories. But you must go to the woods, to the place where it all happened. Only there can you uncover the full story and set them free." Those words settled heavily on my shoulders. The woods had always been a place of fear for me, a place I had been warned to avoid. But now I felt a strange pull, a sense of duty to uncover the truth. "All right, I'll go," I said, surprising myself with my own resolve. "I'll go to the woods." The woman smiled, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Thank you, but be careful. The woods can be deceptive, and the spirits may not be the only ones watching. Trust your instincts, and remember that not all who wander there are lost." I turned back to say something else to her, and she was gone. I was once again enveloped in darkness. I stood there for a moment, my heart racing, the weight of her words echoing in my mind. The library felt eerily quiet, as if it too was holding its breath, waiting for my next move. I glanced around, half expecting the figure to reappear, but the eyes remained still. Gathering my courage, I turned and made my way back to the entrance, the note clutched tightly in my hand. It felt like a lifeline, a connection to the mystery that awaited me in the woods. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, refreshing yet foreboding. The moon hung low in the sky, casting silvery beams that danced across the ground. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of damp earth and pine, and began my journey towards the woods. The path was familiar, but it felt different under the weight of the woman's revelation. Each step I took seemed to echo with the stories of those who had vanished, their whispers carried by the wind. I could almost hear their voices urging me forward, guiding me to the heart of the mystery. As I entered the woods, the trees loomed tall and imposing, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and I felt a shiver once again run down my spine. I paused, glancing back at the path I had taken, but there was no turning back now. I pressed on, the underbrush crunching beneath my feet. The deeper I went, the more I felt the presence of something unseen watching me from the shadows. I recalled the woman's warning about the spirits and the deceptive nature of the woods, but I had to stay focused to remember why I was there. After what felt like hours of wandering, I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. In the center stood an ancient tree, its gnarled roots twisting above the ground like the fingers of a giant. It felt significant, as if it held the weight of countless stories within its bark. I approached cautiously, feeling a strange pull toward it. As I reached out to touch the rough surface, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves and sending a chill through the air. I closed my eyes, allowing myself to listen, to feel the energy of the place. "Remember us," a voice whispered, soft yet insistent. "Tell our stories." I opened my eyes, startled by the clarity of my voice. It seemed to resonate from the very heart of the ancient tree. The air around me cracked with energy, and I felt as if the forest itself was alive, urging me to uncover its secrets. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking the silence. The wind swirled around me, carrying with it the faintest echoes of laughter, sorrow, and longing. It was as if the spirits of those who had once roamed these woods were reaching out, desperate to be remembered. "Lost," the voice replied, a haunting melody that wrapped around me like a shroud. "We are the lost, the forgotten. We linger in the shadows, waiting for someone to listen, to share our stories, our tales." I took a step closer to the tree, my heart pounding in my chest. "What can I do?" I asked, feeling a strange sense of purpose wash over me. The weight of the woman's warning echoing still in my mind, but I couldn't turn away now. There was something compelling about this moment, a connection that transcended time. "Speak our names," the voice urged, growing stronger. "Let the world know we existed. We are not just whispers in the wind. We are stories waiting to be told." I closed my eyes again, focusing on the energy surrounding me. I could feel the presence of countless souls, each one yearning for recognition. "I will remember you," I promised, my voice steady. "I will tell your stories." As I spoke those words, the wind picked up, swirling me around me with a newfound intensity. The leaves rustled like applause, and I felt a warmth envelop me as if the spirits were embracing my promise. I opened my eyes, and the clearing seemed to shimmer with a soft glow, illuminating the ancient tree in a way that felt almost sacred. "Thank you," the voice whispered, now a chorus of many. "You have given us hope, but beware, for the woods hold more than just our memories. There are those who seek to silence us, to keep our stories buried." I looked around. Who would do such a thing? I asked, my curiosity piqued despite the warning. "Those who fear the truth," the voices replied in unison. "Those who wish to erase the past. They will come for you if they sense you are a threat to their silence." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I won't let that happen. I'll protect your stories." The resolve in my voice surprised even me, but I felt a fierce determination rising within me. The weight of the spirits that trust settled on my shoulders, and I knew I couldn't back down now. "Then you must be vigilant," the chorus of voices warned, their tones shifting from hopeful to urgent. "The woods are alive with watchers, and they will not take kindly to your quest. They thrive on fear and ignorance, and they will do anything to maintain their grip on the past." I glanced around the clearing, the ancient tree standing tall and proud, its gnarled branches reaching out like arms ready to embrace the world. "How can I help again?" I asked again, feeling the energy pulse around me, urging me to take action. "Gather the stories," they replied, their voices weaving together like a tapestry. "Seek out those who remember. Listen to the tales of the elders, the whispers of the wind, the songs of the river. Each story is a thread that binds us to this place, and together they will weave a fabric of truth that cannot be torn apart." I nodded, feeling the weight of their request settle deep within me. "I will listen, I will seek out the stories, and I'll share them with the world." "Good," the voices echoed, a sense of relief washing over them. "But remember, the path will not be easy. There are those who will try to dissuade you, to lead you astray. Trust your instincts and let the forest guide you." As I stood there, the air thick with anticipation, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The trees around me seemed to lean in closer, their leaves whispering secrets that only I could hear. I took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the place surge through me, filling me with purpose. "How do I begin?" I asked, my heart racing with the thrill of the unknown. "Follow the river," the voices instructed, their tone now a gentle breeze. "It carries the memories of those who have come before. Listen to its flow, and it will lead you to the first of many stories. With a final glance at the ancient tree, I turned and made my way toward the sound of the river, my heart pounding with excitement and anticipation. Each step felt like a promise, a commitment to the spirits who had entrusted me with their tales. As I walked, the forest seemed to come alive around me. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of moss and earth. I could hear the distant rush of water, a soothing melody that beckoned me forward. The river wound its way through the woods, and its banks, lined with wildflowers and ferns, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the deep greens of the forest. As I approached the water's edge, I could see the sunlight dancing on the surface, creating a shimmering pathway that seemed to invite me closer. I knelt beside the river, letting my fingers trail through the cool water. It felt alive, pulsing with energy, as if it were a conduit for the stories of the past. I closed my eyes and listened intently, allowing the sound of the flowing water to wash over me. It was a symphony of whispers, each ripple carrying a fragment of history, a memory waiting to be uncovered. "Tell me your stories," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am here to listen." The river responded with a gentle rush, and in that moment I felt a connection to something greater than myself. Images began to form in my mind, visions of people long gone, their laughter echoing in the air, their struggles and triumphs woven into the very fabric of the land. I could almost see them standing by the river, sharing their tales with one another, their voices mingling with the sound of the water. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A small silver fish leapt from the water, glistening in the sunlight, before splashing back down. It was as if the river were urging me to follow its flow, to dive deeper into the stories it held. I stood up, feeling invigorated, and began to walk along the river bank. Each step felt purposeful, as if the earth beneath my feet was guiding me towards something significant. The trees whispered encouragement, their leaves rustling in the breeze, and I could feel the spirits of the forest watching me. As I continued, I noticed a small clearing up ahead where the river widened and the water slowed. It was a serene spot surrounded by tall willows that dipped their branches into the water, creating a natural curtain of green. I somehow felt drawn to it, sensing this was where I would find my first story. Approaching the clearing, I noticed an old stone half buried in the earth, covered in moss and lichen. It looked ancient, as if it had been there for centuries, a silent witness to the passage of time. Slowly I knelt beside it, brushing away the moss to reveal intricate carvings etched into the stone. The carvings depicted the scenes of people gathering by the river, their faces filled with joy and sorrow, their hands raised in celebration and mourning. I traced the lines with my fingers, feeling the way their stories resonate within me. It was a reminder that every stone, every ripple in the water held a narrative waiting to be told. As I studied the carvings, a sense of reverence washed over me. Each figure seemed to come alive in my mind, their emotions palpable. I could almost hear their voices, a chorus of laughter, and tears blending with the gentle murmur of the river. It was as if the stone was a portal, connecting me to their lives, their joys, and their heartaches. I closed my eyes again, allowing the images to flow freely. I envisioned a gathering of families, their children playing by the water's edge, the air filled with the aroma of food being shared. I could see the elders, their faces lined with wisdom, recounting tales of bravery and love, their voices rising above the sound of the current. The river had been a witness to their lives, a constant presence through the seasons of change. Suddenly, a soft breeze rustled the leaves above me, and I opened my eyes to find a small feather drifting down, landing gently on the stone beside me. It was delicate and white, glimmering in the dappled sunlight. I picked it up, feeling a sense of connection to the moment, as if it were a sign from the spirits of the forest, encouraging me to continue my journey. With the feather in hand, I stood up and looked around the clearing. The willows swayed gracefully, their branches creating a serene dance. I felt a pull to explore further, to uncover more stories hidden within the embrace of the woods. The river continued to flow beside me, its voice a constant reminder of the life that thrived around it. As I walked along the bank, I noticed a series of smooth stones, each one unique in color and shape. I began to collect them, feeling their cool surfaces against my palms. Each stone felt like a piece of the river's history, a tangible connection to the past. I imagined the countless hands that had touched them, the children who had skipped them across the water, and the lovers who had carved their initials into their surfaces. With my collection growing, I found a comfortable spot on a large rock that jutted out over the water. I sat down, placing the stones beside me, and took a moment to breathe in the beauty surrounding me. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting playful shadows on the ground, and the sound of the river became a soothing backdrop to my thoughts. In that tranquil moment, I realized that the river was not just a body of water, it was a storyteller, a keeper of memories and a source of inspiration. It urged me to reflect on my own journey, consider the stories I had carried within me. What stories had shaped my life? What moments had left their mark, like the carvings on the stones? As I sat there, the gentle rush of the river seemed to echo my thoughts, urging me to delve deeper into my own narrative. I closed my eyes once more, allowing the sounds of nature to envelop me. I began to visualize the significant moments of my life, laughter shared with friends, quiet evenings spent in contemplation, challenges that had tested my resolve. Each memory felt like a stone, smooth and worn, shaped by time and experience. I thought of the people who had walked alongside me, their presence like the trees that lined the riverbank, offering shade and support. And there were those who had come and gone, leaving behind lessons and memories, much like the water that flowed ceaselessly, carrying with it the remnants of the past while nurturing new life along its banks. I opened my eyes and looked at the stones I had collected. Each one represented a fragment of my journey, a reminder of where I had been and the paths I had yet to explore. I decided to create a small ritual, a way to acknowledge the significance of these stones and the stories they held. I arranged them in a circle on the rock, placing the delicate feather in the center, and as I did so, a whispered quiet thank you to the river for its wisdom and for the stories it had shared. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, as if the river itself was affirming my commitment to embrace my own narrative. After a moment of reflection, I stood up, and feeling invigorated and ready to continue my exploration, I left the stones arranged in their circle, a small tribute to the past, while I ventured farther along the riverbank. The path ahead was inviting, and I could sense that more stories awaited me, hidden within the embrace of the woods. As I walked, I listened intently to the sounds around me, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Each sound felt like a note in a symphony, harmonizing with my thoughts and guiding me forward. I was no longer just an observer. I was a participant in this living narrative, intertwined with the river and the forest, ready to discover the next chapter of my journey.